The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
A much-needed win for the Philadelphia 76ers, but of course, it doesn't come without the dramatics.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Philadelphia 76ers, they come out with a huge win against the Spurs, 111-106. And it was a big one because Joel Embiid ended up getting ejected in the game, and then Tyrese Maxey officially had to take over. Tyrese Maxey Magic. We'll get to that in just a moment. But what's going on? What's the air in Philadelphia here, Keith? Because it was a few days ago for the Philadelphia Eagles that C.J. Gardner-Johnson got ejected from the game against the Commanders. And then the very next day, Joel Embiid gets ejected as well, going into the face of the official. 2 technical fouls. He's out. What do you make of all this? Joel Embiid coming back and then this all happening as well.
You know what? I think it was a bad look. I mean, I know people are saying and everyone, they have their opinion, and a lot of people felt like it was a bad call. But the reason why I feel like it was a bad look and a bad situation is because it looked like Joel lost some control, right? And it's not only was it an official, it was a female official, right? And you hate to see something like that. And I get it. It was one of those things where he drives the lane. He collides with Victor Wembanyama, and he's called for a charge. It looked like it could have been a blocking foul, but you can also see where the position that she was in, that she felt like it was a charge. And then B goes over to her. He's trying to explain himself, and he's a big guy, and you can tell that while he's over top of her, she's doing a technical thing. And then next thing you know, all I know is she's walking away as they tell you to do, and he's following her. And he has to be separated from her. He actually shoved somebody out the way and did this and that. And to me, I get the C.J. Gardner-Johnson thing when he got ejected. But with this one, it was kind of sort of like, it was just a bad look. It really was. I mean, it was just a bad look. It was worse than the football thing. So to me, that was the biggest thing that I took away from it was, and I get it, you're frustrated, but it wasn't a good look in my eyes. It just wasn't.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is if you're Joel Embiid, you just can't do that. And once again, you understand where he's coming from, the situation of being frustrated, but then to take it to that next point and have it go further and further, you are the franchise player once again. You are leading by example. That's not what you want everybody on your team doing it. And there can be frustration in the lack of calls going your way and the inconsistency of how the game was kind of called throughout up until that point early on in the contest. But at the same time, you can't be going after an official like that. They're going to tee you up right away. That's what's going to happen. You're going to get thrown out of the game. What happens if this comes around when it's a big-time game? It's a play-in game, and Joel Embiid kind of just loses it out there, and then all of a sudden he gets ejected, and you need him to win a big game in a big spot. This is not something you want to see from your franchise player, and especially, Keith, I think after not seeing this big 3 play together that often, play throughout all 4 quarters, not seeing Joel Embiid out there playing often. And I understand, once again, his frustration, but you want to see Joel Embiid out there throughout the entirety of the game, not when this season already he's been struggling to go game after game. And now you have a situation where it's not the injury, it's about him getting ejected from the contest. Just not a good look. I have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, they just have problems. But I mean, the thing about it is we got to talk about this whole game was just wacky from the start. I mean, you talk about, you got Andre Drummond, who received a technical early in the first half. I mean, in the second quarter, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like he gets up in Wemby's face and he calls him soft, but he got a technical because he shoved him to the ground twice. knocked him over twice. And then the third, then he gets in his face, he calls him soft. And then all of a sudden it's like, did you shove him a third time? And then come to find out he stepped on his foot. And then they eject him for that because they felt like he shoved him. And then next thing you know, they say that Wemby was flopping. So then Tyrese Maxey gets to shoot a foul shot. And then they're like, oh, no. We looked at it and he actually stepped on his foot and we're taking the flopping call away. So the whole thing was just a wacky game. It just was bad. And like, yeah, Joel, like I get it. You know, if you're the Sixers, you do want him to be in the game the whole time. But to me, it just looks like it's frustration is mounting. I mean, we talk about the incident that he had beforehand, the 3-game suspension. You know, we talk about how he, you know, refuses to speak to some media members now. To me, it looks like a guy who knows that his knee is bothering him and he's just extremely frustrated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that I think are agreeing with you on that one. So let us know in the comments what you think about this. Now, I will say, as an official and somebody who has officiated in the past, that is not something that you want to do. Go back and forth on a call, make it seem like you're not fully confident. Now, granted, that's why they had the video monitor. That's why they look at things. That's why they review things. You have that at the highest of high levels. But when you're calling a game so inconsistent and then it starts brewing, once again, I can understand the frustration coming from Joel Embiid. Hey, what did you guys just overturn from Andre Drummond? And now Wemby all of a sudden is getting a charge on me? No, he wasn't. It looks like it was a block there, and it probably was the wrong call. But at the same time, you have to control that. You have to wind that down. That's who you are. You're the franchise player. And I don't want to hear that, oh, well, you know, he did that. His knee's banged up. He's not playing well, all these things. He has been playing pretty decent as of late. But come on, Joel. You're the franchise player. You're supposed to be the leader of this team. You can't just be doing that and going out there and having this happen time after time. I'm curious if he will play on Christmas Day now against the Boston Celtics after only playing a short amount in the game last night. But I have to agree with you there. I get the frustration from the officials and everything like that. How does Nick Nurse and the rest of the team, in your opinion, Keith, when you've been able to be around them, practice and everything like that, kind of see and look at this outburst? Embiid did come out at the end of the game, out of the tunnel, out of the locker room, and kind of congratulated Tyrese Maxey. So it looks like that might have been a positive thing. But you have to think the players are thinking, why is he putting himself in this position?
I mean, some of them have to. I mean, you know, because they're looking at it like, dude, you're going to hurt us. Your actions are actually hindering us. Now, of course, Maxey is saying he didn't see it, but then when you look at the video, you see Maxey standing up, right, like on the bench after the fact. Like, okay, all right, I understand. And then Nick Nurse said he didn't see it either. One of those things. So, you know, right now publicly, you can see that guys are trying to protect Embiid because they didn't know if he was going to get an additional suspension or anything at that particular time. But, you know, if you're a team, you're looking at it like, dude, you need to calm down because we need you. We were fortunate enough to hold on to this game and win without you, but we need you to be able to play, right? And so, you know, there has to be, you know, one of those things where I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of the veterans had a talk with him like, yo, man, what was that? Like, you know, you just can't do that moving forward. I mean, nah. So, no, but again, with publicly, they're always like, yeah, you know, it was a bad call, it was this and that. But again, regardless, like you said, regardless of if the call was wrong or not, it depending on what angle it is, you got to leave it up to the coach to basically say, let's challenge this thing and take it from there. You don't go up there and you don't lose your cool, and especially lose your cool against a female ref. You just don't do that.
We don't like to see that. I agree with you on that one. But at the same time, this is something that it continues to be a problem a little bit for Joel Embiid. When he comes back, he can dominate, but his availability hasn't been there. And that's the last thing you want to see, even though the game was very tough officiated. And from that standpoint, for the players,
there's no excuse. Like I get it. Like everybody was saying, I know, but like in the arena, everybody was yelling at the ref. They were doing that. There's no excuse for that. And then even like the thing is, well, we got to realize they did go to the monitor. They got stuff corrected. I also think what happened is the Secaucus, they basically called him and say, hey, y'all got this call wrong. We got to get it corrected right now, quick in a hurry. And then the one thing is, like, it was a lot of things that was going on. I will say this, like, Drummond is lucky because, basically you get a technical foul. Wemby is over there talking to the ref saying, hey, you see this guy keeps shoving me. And you're up in Wemby's face in front of the ref saying, you're soft. Well, next thing you know, when Wemby falls down, they're going to assume that you knocked them down, right? So, I think that, I think that when you see how a game is officiated that way, you got to make smarter plays on everyone's behalf, right? They just have to. And so, I get it. It was bad, some of the calls, but they corrected them. And you can't allow that to keep driving you. You have to make smarter plays. You just have to.
Don't play expecting a foul or expecting the whistle to go your way. There's a lot of times in games that calls might have been wrong, but you got to play through them. At the end of the day, they won the game, but it wasn't because of all that madness happening early on in the contest.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. And you can go ahead and take a look at the second round of the college football playoff. Despite already having beaten Ohio State, Oregon, 2.5-point underdogs against the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl. I may or may not already have an Oregon plus 2.5 ticket in my pocket. Penn State heads into the Fiesta Bowl favored by 10.5 over Heisman runner-up Ashton Genty and the Boise State Broncos. Both teams are combined 10-0 in the Fiesta despite the larger line. This should be a good one. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Our Locked On Blazers host, Mike Richmond, I was texting him during this game, and he said to me, what did he say? He said, this is the team that, he's like, this is a team some people in your orbit have to podcast about several times a week.
That's true. I guess there's two sides to the coin.
And we've been there. When Isaac and I started this show in 2017, it was before Dennis Smith Jr. So there was nothing to talk about.
The Mavs were never this bad.
Even the season with Dennis Smith Jr., they weren't this bad, but we still had that. And it was like every day we're like, all right, well, let's do draft, trade. What else can we talk about besides the on-court product, basically? But today we're talking about the on-court product. We'll get into how the Mavs got this win, how they locked in the second and third quarter on defense, I thought. We'll talk about Luka's return, 27, 7, and 7 in under 30 minutes. Gotta love that. I want to talk about Kyrie and his defense. I think Kyrie's defense was really apparent in this game. But let's start here. The big man, the landlord, Daniel Gafford. To me, player of the game for the Dallas Mavericks. 23 points, only 5 rebounds, but 7 of 7 from the floor, 9 of 14 from the free throw line. 14 free throws. I didn't look that up, but that's got to be like a record for him. There's no,
it was. I think
I can't imagine he's has 14 rebounds or 14 free throws in another game. And he just controlled the paint. And the thing about him is these are the teams that he thrives against. The Portland Trail Blazers played 40 minutes of Ayton at center or Klingon at center, the big centers that he can body, that Gafford is stronger than, that he can play better than. And he had a sequence in the third quarter, 350, 250, 150, and one in a row, and just scored and got fouled, scored and got fouled, scored and got fouled. You just saw everything that Daniel Gafford has been this season in the game like this, where he can score, he can get in the paint, he can finish, and it's not just alley-oop dunk, wide open dunk, right? It's not like the Rudy Gobert alley-oop dunk where it's got to be perfect and it's got to be in the right spot and he only does it 1 or 2 times a game. This was, I have the ball, I'm going to go up, I'm going to score, or I'm going to take a couple dribbles and score in the post. Like, he was showing off all the moves tonight.
Yeah, and I mean his scoring adds another wrinkle to this offense. And I was just looking it up because I was curious. In the 8 games that he either hasn't played, he only missed 1 game, but either hasn't played or scored under 10 points. 8 games, the Mavs are 3-5, and in the 21 games that he scores double digits, they're 16-5 in those games when he scores 10 or more points. I mean, that's an unbelievable record, and it really does add another wrinkle to this offense because there's games, like for example, that Clippers game a few nights ago, the one in which they lost, where you just saw Derek Lively is, and I'm sure we might talk about this, but Lively, the starting 5 is perfect. Gafford off the bench is perfect. Like it just it complements what those two do so perfectly. But you saw those moments where Zubats is in, a deep drop 10 feet off of Lively, and Lively's just sitting there at the top of the key and waiting for somebody to come and get the handoff or somebody to make a backdoor cut. Where Gafford is somebody who can look at that. You saw that multiple times tonight where Ayton is sort of dropping off and giving Gafford 10 feet of runway, and Gafford decides, all right, I'm going to the rim, and I'm going to put my shoulder into you, and I'm going to get an and one, or I'm going to finish. And that's the wrinkle that he adds to the offense. And it's not a coincidence that when he scores, teams are like, what are we supposed to do now? And that's why their Mavs are 16-5 in games where he's double digits.
We've seen him be effective in transition. I don't know so much in this game, but run out and be a long target for Luka as well. And I just think that him being able to do that, being able to dump down and let him kind of post up a little bit, let him do some work, or just be around the basket and finish when, to create a threat there so that there's not as much attention and you can't send 2 guys to the ball when somebody drives. I think that's what we talk about, vertical gravity, when somebody can roll up and down, like down the lane, and you can't just like leave that guy. Like you've got to stick with him, and you can't just like run away and then go double on Luka or Kyrie who are driving or whoever. That's vertical gravity. I think Gafford brings that for sure. He had a quote after the game that I found really funny. He said, it was just asked about his game. He's like, yeah, it's great. It's great anytime I can score and anytime I can get an and one, because then you just get a nice scream out, get all the negative energy out, get all the negative out. Like it's very cathartic to get out. And man, he got it. And I think those screams, like after the and ones, and that, like I think that gives the Mavs energy. I really do. I think that helps them like amp up. I think that he's one of those guys that drives the team emotionally when he gets those kind of buckets, because Clay hits a 3 and like it's cool, calm, and collected. He was a little excited for a couple of his, but when when PJ does something, he can get pretty into it. But for the most part, guys are cool, calm, and collected when something good happens to them. And then all of a sudden, Gafford gets something going, and it's just this primal scream. And I think it really gets the rest of the Mavericks into it. And I love seeing that from Daniel Gafford. I think that the rest of the team feeds off of it.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this before, like the energy guys for teams, especially a team that has been in deep playoff runs, team that just went to the NBA Finals. December 23rd against the Trailblazers, you have a Christmas Day game. Like that's always one of the biggest days of the year in the NBA. This is a game where maybe you get caught sleepwalking a tiny bit, and the Mavs had a kind of stinky first quarter. I never thought the game was in question at all, but a first quarter, you're like, all right, they got to clean this up, and having guys that are just 110% all the time and bring that energy, bring that effort, are going to scream after they hit and ones and get the bench going. Like those guys are really valuable. I mean, they really are. We've talked about this. It's hard for anybody on the team to not match that energy when somebody's bringing it. So, we love that.
Gafford plays such a good role off the bench, gives them that extra bench scoring when they need it. They don't need more scoring in the starting lineup, and that's what Gafford brings, right? But they just don't need that. They need that coming off the bench. They need that in some of those lineups where it's just Luka or just Kyrie. And I think his fit, I think moving to this spot has been so good for him.
Yeah, I agree. Like the Mavs are now 6-0 with this starting 5.
Yeah, with
Luka, Kyrie, Clay, PJ, and Derek Lively, kind of the starting 5 that we all sort of expected. And I think it's part of it is because Gafford.
We were right again.
Yeah. Just another correct prediction on our end.
I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
That's right. Hey, we're just watching the same games. We just seem to always come to the right conclusion. But no, it is, Lively plays so well next to Luka and Kyrie. Gafford does as well. But Gafford's also somebody who can generate his own offense and stuff like that, which is something Lively's still working on in a lot of ways. And Lively's, a better playmaker, a better passer. I think that kind of works with that group a little bit more.
Yes.
Where Gafford, when you're staggering the stars and Gafford's out there, you need another guy who's like, all right, 10 seconds left on the shot clock, dump it into Gafford and let him post up and see what we can get out of that. That's really valuable to have.
Yeah, or like come off, like the ball handler comes off of a screen, you're looking and you're like a quarterback making your different reads. Okay, should I go to the roller or the guy that just popped? Should I go to the far side corner? Did somebody help off of there? Gafford becomes one of your reads. Lively is not necessarily always one of your reads because you don't know that if he's going to have an advantage down there and post up and score. Every once in a while, he'll do the little hook shot thing. He's been doing that a little bit more. He had one of those in this game. But Gafford is definitely, if Gafford is posted up and has position, all of a sudden he becomes one of your reads that you can throw the ball to off of a screen. I think that's just invaluable for this team. So Gafford, great game from him, I thought, and just played really well off the bench. Good for him, playing in the perfect role for him.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
It's time to start believing.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast.
We obviously know what the Orlando Magic are missing right now. We know what they don't have. We know what is not on the table. We know what doesn't exist for them. They don't have Paolo Banchero. They don't have Franz Wagner. They don't have Mo Wagner anymore. They don't have a great offense. They're missing their two best attackers. They're not the team that we thought they would be. And so it's kind of easy to lower expectations. It's kind of easy to say, well, they're not going to have it against quality teams like the Boston Celtics. They might be able to outlast and outpace bad teams in this league. But against quality teams, the teams they'll have to beat when they get to the playoffs, they're not going to have it. They're just not going to have the horses. They're not going to have enough. They're relying on G League guys. They're relying on the depth of their bench. And even deep teams get snapped at times when there's so many injuries, when there's so many key players missing. Those are all excuses. Those are all things you say when you're not a winning team, when you don't have a winning culture, when you don't have that essential quality belief. Look, there's no shame in losing to the Boston Celtics. There never is. But when that door is open for a win and you're a team that expects to win, that believes that you are good enough to win on almost any night, you step up and you get the job done. And it does not matter otherwise. You find a way. That's what the good teams do. And we've been talking about this for a long time. Certainly this week. If you go back into my archives, probably for years. Good teams find a way. It doesn't matter who. Everyone on the roster has a purpose. And everyone is on the roster for a reason. And everyone on the roster is going to be called upon at some point. This is that point. This is that moment. And if you don't believe you can win, you won't win. So let's forget the excuses. Let's forget it all, because the Magic have certainly forgotten every excuse they might have for winning or losing these games. They have certainly forgotten. They certainly know that they're down key players and that the margin for error is smaller, but that only inspires them to play harder. So let's shake off those excuses. Let's shake off any doubts that we have about this team's ability to win and this team's ability to compete and this team's ability to find ways to do it. And let's just believe. Because this team believes. This team believes wholeheartedly in what they're capable of doing. Wholeheartedly in who they are. Wholeheartedly and what makes this group special. You don't win the game that the Orlando Magic won Saturday against the Miami Heat if you don't believe. Yes, the Magic maybe caught lightning in a bottle, but you don't hold an NBA team to 8 points in a quarter if you don't believe you can do it. You don't believe that stacking good play after good play after good play is going to net you a win. You don't erase a 15-point halftime deficit to the defending champion Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum or not, if you don't believe what you're doing is right. If what you're doing is going to work. The Orlando Magic believe. I don't know. They have shortcomings. They were turning the ball over a ton. They couldn't hit a shot to save their life. But if you watch the first half of this game against the Celtics, you saw the hints of that belief. You saw, the Magic have a game plan to slow the Celtics juggernaut down, to limit their three-point shooting, make them drive to the basket right into the teeth of the Magic's vaunted defense. And sure, that defense had some holes in it, was fouling too much, was caught in transition with turnovers, was giving up drives to Jaylen Brown. There were a lot of things going wrong. That the Magic got into that locker room, cleaned up those mistakes, understood that the mistakes were their own, and then got back on the floor and executed a flawless second half. A 65-46 second half, by the way. One where they erased that 15-point deficit completely in the third quarter. One where they forced turnovers, continued to limit the Celtics three-point shooting, and made every big play with confidence that you would need to make to win a game. All from players you don't expect to make those plays. Players like Tristan da Silva, a rookie who made the biggest shot of the game, with the Magic losing their 10-point lead, up by only one as things got tight late in the game. The defending champions looked like defending champions finally waking up from their slumber and perhaps taking this Magic team a little too lightly or letting the Magic push them around, to be frank. He gets a pass from Trevelyan Queen, of all people, for a big corner three. A three-pointer that makes it a 4-point game with 9 seconds left. A three-pointer that a rookie does not make unless he is as cool and collected as Tristan da Silva, but also does not, for a player that has the confidence from his teammates to make that play. The same thing with Trevelyan Queen, a two-way player who has had some big moments with the Magic before, but had not played very much at all until Saturday's game against the Heat, stepped up in the fourth quarter with his energetic defense, got his first career start, defended everyone from Jaylen Brown to Kristaps Porzingis, and did it with energy and intensity that flowed to everybody else. The Magic's ultimate secret weapon and superpower is they defend like maniacs. They do not stop. They do not know how to stop. And that intensity, when it was finally directed in the right places, bothered the Celtics. Because, Magic fouled a lot, but they were physical. And the Celtics clearly did not anticipate or were not ready for or could not match a physical Magic team. This has been the conversation all week, by the way. That when you're down as many key players as you are down, you have to embrace your identity. And so you bring in a Trevelyan Queen, who's just all energy and defense and length, and has to find a role for himself in the NBA. He's an NBA player. He's on a two-way contract. He's a G League MVP a few years ago. He's an NBA player. His shot has come a long way, and he defends like it's his last game, playing so hard. And you add that to all the tryhards and all the intensity the Magic bring regularly, you had a Celtics team that was uncomfortable, to say the least. Was looking at the refs, was looking at each other, was taken out of their game. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But the Magic know exactly who they are. That was my statement after the game on Saturday. Orlando knows who they are. And this is what a culture looks like. This is what a winning team looks like. When you can be down so many key players and it doesn't change your identity. It doesn't change your formula for winning. You still find a way to execute. And some guys have to step up. You have to get maybe someone different every night to play at a really high level. It was Cole Anthony on Saturday. It was Trevelyan Queen and Tristan da Silva on Monday. But you still play your brand of basketball. The Magic have long believed in this brand of basketball, this defense-first, intense brand of basketball. They don't make these comebacks. They don't get these wins without it. Now, it's time for you to believe. No more excuses. That's another theme from earlier in the week. No more questions. No more wondering and worrying about what the Magic don't have. It's not coming back anytime soon. It's understanding the Magic have enough with what they do have. And that is more than enough to build these impressive victories.